My name is Cassandra, and I'm 32 years old. As a medical researcher, I expected my greatest challenges to involve finding cures, never imagining I'd end up battling betrayal from my own sister. The silence in that hospital room still haunts me as my mother screamed at me to save Amanda. She needed bone marrow, and I was the only match. The same sister who had sabotaged my research and destroyed my reputation just 6 months earlier. Would you risk yourself for someone who ruined everything you built? Before I tell you how the truth finally came out, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you enjoy stories like this. Growing up in our suburban Boston home, I always felt like an outsider. Our classic New England colonial house, with its white picket fence and perfectly trimmed lawn, looked like a picture-perfect American family from the outside. But inside, I lived in Amanda's shadow. She was 3 years older, sharing our parents' blonde hair and blue eyes. She had our mother's smile, our father's confident posture. I had curly auburn hair, green eyes, and a quiet nature that made me stand out like a mismatched puzzle piece. Every milestone of mine seemed insignificant next to hers. On my 8th birthday, I got a small homemade celebration. A month later, Amanda's 11th birthday had a catered party, a magician, and personalized gift bags. My parents said she was more social and needed it. When I brought home straight A's in 4th grade, my report card got a nod before disappearing into a drawer. When Amanda raised her C average to B's, they took her out to dinner and bought her a new bike. Christmas was no different. Amanda unwrapped piles of presents while I got practical things: clothes, books. One Christmas, at age 10, I received a secondhand microscope while she got a brand new computer. When I looked disappointed, my mother whispered, "Don't be ungrateful. We spend the same amount. Your things just cost less." Amanda learned quickly how to use this favoritism. Anything that went wrong, a broken vase, missing cookies, a carpet stain, somehow became my fault. My parents always believed her. The worst incident was the dress. When I was 8, Amanda cut holes in her new dress the night before a wedding because she wanted to wear something else. The next morning, she cried and told our parents she had seen me with scissors near her closet. Despite my desperate denials, I was grounded for 2 weeks. Amanda smirked as I was sent to my room, and that night I heard her laughing with our mother while choosing a prettier replacement dress. These experiences shaped me. I learned to rely only on myself and chased validation through academics, not family praise. I buried myself in science and documentaries while Amanda focused on popularity. By high school, we lived in separate worlds under the same roof. The only person who truly saw me was my grandmother, my mother's mother. Summers at her Vermont home gave me rare moments of peace. She treated us equally, and sometimes she watched me with a knowing expression. "You have your own light, Cassandra," she told me once while baking cookies. "Different from the rest, but special all the same. Things aren't always what they seem." I didn't understand her then, but those words stayed with me. The first hint that something was truly different came when I was 14. Working on a family heritage project, I searched photo albums for my baby pictures. Amanda had plenty: newborn photos and hospital blankets held by overjoyed parents. But none existed of me as a newborn. My earliest photos showed a baby about 6 months old sitting up and playing with toys. When I questioned my mother, she snapped defensively, grabbed the album, and said they had been busier when I was born and didn't have time for pictures. Stop looking for problems where there are none. When I asked again why there were no hospital photos like Amanda's, my face flushed with anger. "You are the most ungrateful child. Do you know how many kids would love to have what you have? A roof, food, parents who provide, and you complain about baby pictures? This family has given you everything." Her outburst felt wildly disproportionate to my simple question. I learned to stop asking. Something didn't add up, but I was too young and dependent to pursue answers. Instead, I poured my energy into planning my escape, counting the days until college when I could finally live without feeling like an afterthought. The day my acceptance letter arrived from Johns Hopkins School of Medicine was the day my life truly began. Not only was I accepted, but I received a full scholarship covering tuition, room, and board. My hands trembled as I reread the letter to make sure it wasn't a mistake. This was my freedom, proof that my accomplishments stood on their own. I rushed to tell my parents, hoping for once to see them proud. My mother was cooking, my father watching the news. I got into Johns Hopkins, I said, holding up the letter. Full scholarship. My father looked up briefly. Baltimore? That's far. My mother frowned. Medical school is very difficult. Are you sure you can handle that kind of pressure? Before I could reply, Amanda burst through the front door, dropping shopping bags. Mom, Dad, amazing news. My fashion design teacher says I have real talent. She wants me to apply to Parsons in New York. Instantly, my moment vanished. My parents spent the evening celebrating Amanda's potential career, researching persons, and eating ice cream. My acceptance letter was forgotten on the counter, eventually used as a coaster for my father's coffee cup. That fall, I moved to Baltimore and threw myself into medical school with everything I had. The workload was overwhelming: anatomy, biochemistry, diagnostics, but while others complained, I thrived. For the first time, my efforts were measured objectively, without favoritism or comparisons. During my second year, I met Dr. Eleanor Hayes, a brilliant hematologist who became both mentor and the closest thing to a supportive parent I'd ever known. After one of her lectures, I stayed to ask questions, and we talked for over 2 hours. You have a natural intuition for research, she told me. The way you connect seemingly unrelated ideas is rare. Under her guidance, I discovered my passion for rare blood disorders. Investigating diseases at the molecular level felt like solving intricate puzzles others had overlooked. I graduated at the top of my class and published my first research paper, a case study on a rare anemia that gained recognition in several journals. After residency, I was accepted into a prestigious fellowship at the Johnson Institute for Hematological Research in Boston. Returning to the same city as my family gave me pause, but the opportunity was unmatched. The institute led the world in stem cell research, offering resources few places could. My work focused on new therapies for treatment-resistant leukemia using modified stem cells. It was groundbreaking work with the potential to save thousands of lives. I led a dedicated team, and my closest colleague was Martin Chen, a brilliant geneticist with a sharp, dry humor. Unlike many who found me quiet or distant, Martin understood me. One late night, as we analyzed data, he said, "You're the most dedicated person I've ever met, but sometimes I wonder who you're trying to prove yourself to." His comment struck deeper than he realized. Even with all my achievements, part of me was still that child seeking validation. But now, at least I was earning it through real accomplishments, not begging for it from parents who never cared. By my third year, our research showed incredible promise. We had developed a method of modifying stem cells to target cancer cells while sparing healthy tissue. Dr. Winters, our department director, called me into his office one Friday afternoon. "Cassandra, the results from your latest trials are remarkable," he said, sliding a folder across his desk. "The board is considering a new research division for personalized cellular therapies with a $2 million annual budget. They want you to lead it." I stared at him, stunned. This was everything I'd worked for, a chance to expand my research and shape new treatments for blood cancers. The official announcement won't be made for another month, but it's practically certain. You've earned this. Walking back to my lab, I felt a lightness I had never felt before. It was more than professional success. It was validation. I had finally found a world that valued my work and saw my worth. I had no idea this moment marked the peak before my greatest downfall, and that Amanda, the sister I hadn't spoken to in 5 years, would admit it. That Monday began like any other. I was reviewing data from our latest lymphoma trial, absorbed in the promising results when Martin cleared his throat. "Cass, someone's here to see you." I looked up to see Amanda standing in the doorway, looking like she'd stepped off a magazine cover. Perfect hair, flawless makeup, a designer outfit worth more than my rent. For a moment, I barely recognized her. "Surprise," she announced. "Your big sis came to visit."
We hadn't spoken since our grandmother's funeral 5 years earlier, exchanging only strained pleasantries. Now, she had invaded the one space where I felt untouchable. "Amanda," I said, cautiously, "this is unexpected. How did you find me?" She laughed, her familiar, charming laugh. "Mom said you were at some big shot research place. I figured I'd surprise you. Lunch?" Martin gave me a small nod, urging me to go. Reluctantly, I followed her to an upscale restaurant where she insisted on ordering. Over lunch, she told me about her failed modeling career in New York. The industry is so ageist. After 28, they wanted younger faces. She had married a wealthy analyst, only to divorce him when she caught him cheating. Such a cliché, she sighed dramatically. Then she leaned in. "Cassandra, I know I wasn't the best sister growing up, but I've been thinking a lot. I want a real relationship. We're adults now. Can't we move past all that?" Her sincerity disarmed me. Part of me longed to believe her. Another part remembered years of manipulation. But when she mentioned our mother asking about me, guilt nudged me into agreeing to occasional sister dinners. Over the next few weeks, Amanda pushed her way into my life with surprising persistence, showing up at my lab with coffee, insisting on lunches, calling constantly. Her questions gradually shifted toward my work. "So, explain your research again like I'm 5, she'd say. I kept things simple at first, but Amanda had a way of drawing out details. She asked clever questions, acted fascinated, and even praised the complexity of stem cell therapies. "What's your secret sauce?" she'd tease. Looking back, I should have noticed the signs. The small notebook where she scribbled when she thought I wasn't watching, the photos she snapped of journal articles on my desk, her sudden desire to meet my colleagues. But I was blinded by the strange novelty of Amanda seeming proud of me. The first warning came from Martin. He stepped into my office one evening and shut the door. "Cass, I saw your sister having coffee with Richard Wells yesterday." My stomach dropped. Dr. Richard Wells led our biggest rival lab at Massachusetts General. We had been racing them for years to develop similar therapies. "Are you sure it was her?" I asked, already knowing it was. Martin nodded. "Positive. They looked comfortable. Maybe it's innocent, but it wasn't." 2 days later, I arrived at the lab to find Priya, my research assistant, pale and panicked. Our backup drive, containing the latest data, including our proprietary cell modification protocol, was missing. Our entire breakthrough, our unique edge, was gone. We searched everywhere. It had vanished without a trace. I immediately suspected Wells, but I had no proof of his involvement until the following week when he published a paper announcing a breakthrough in leukemia treatment using a stem cell modification method nearly identical to the one my team had developed. The institute launched an internal investigation. Security footage from the building's main entrance showed Amanda entering one evening using my access card, which I had reported missing and replaced the week before. She was recorded leaving 2 hours later with a large purse that appeared heavier than when she arrived. When confronted with this evidence, Dr. Winters looked at me with a mix of sympathy and disappointment. "Cassandra, did you give your sister access to the lab?" he asked. "Absolutely not," I insisted. "She must have taken my card without my knowledge." "The board is concerned about your judgment in this matter," he said gravely. "The position we discussed, heading the new research division, they are reconsidering." I felt the floor drop out beneath me. Everything I had worked for was slipping away because of Amanda's betrayal. That evening, I went to her hotel, demanding an explanation. The moment she opened the door, the innocent act vanished. Her smile turned cold, calculated, as if a mask had been removed. "What did you expect, Cassandra? That I would just stand by and watch you become the family success story, the brilliant doctor saving lives, while poor Amanda couldn't even keep a modeling job or a husband?" "You sold my research to Wells," I said, my voice shaking with rage.
Do you have any idea what you've done? Those protocols could save lives. She shrugged. They still will, just with Wells's name on them instead of yours. He paid very well, by the way. Why? I demanded. Why would you do this to me? Her expression hardened. Because you always had to be the perfect one, didn't you? The smart one, the special one. Mom and Dad might have favored me with gifts and attention, but they respected you. They were proud of you in a way they never were of me. Who cares about Amanda's fashion shows when Cassandra is curing cancer? Her voice rose in a mocking falsetto. I stared at her, finally seeing the depth of her resentment. I never had anything you wanted, Amanda. You had everything. The love, the support, the attention. All I had was my work. And now, you don't even have that. She smiled, a cold, satisfied smile that would haunt my nightmares for months. Who's the favorite now? I left her hotel room feeling hollowed out. Within weeks, the fallout was complete. While I wasn't fired, I was removed from leading my research project and placed under strict supervision. My reputation in the scientific community suffered, marred by whispers of nepotism and security breaches. The position heading the new division went to a colleague from another department. My carefully constructed world, the identity I had built for myself as a respected researcher, lay in ruins. And the worst part? No one in my family believed Amanda was responsible. When I called my parents to explain, they dismissed my accusations as jealousy and suggested therapy for paranoia. Once again, Amanda was believed without question, while I was cast as the troublemaker. Some patterns, it seemed, never changed. The months following Amanda's betrayal were the darkest of my life. I moved through my days like a ghost, performing my work under supervision as if I were an untrustworthy intern rather than the accomplished researcher I had been. Colleagues avoided eye contact in the hallways, uncomfortable with the scandal that clung to me like a shadow. Depression settled over me like a heavy blanket. I stopped returning calls, even from Martin, whose unwavering support felt more than I deserved. I questioned everything about myself, wondering if some fundamental flaw made me unworthy of loyalty, even from my own sister. It was Martin who finally broke through my isolation, showing up at my apartment one Saturday morning with coffee and an ultimatum. "You have two choices," he said, setting the coffee on my cluttered table. "You can continue this pity party, which, frankly, doesn't suit you, or you can fight back. Not for your job, not for your reputation, but for your own peace of mind." "How?" I asked, my voice weak from disuse. "No one believes me. Not the board, not my parents. Everyone thinks I'm either incompetent or paranoid." "Then prove them wrong," he said simply. "You're a researcher, Cass. So research. There's something off about this whole situation with your family. You've noticed the little things that never added up. Maybe it's time to look deeper." His words struck a chord. All my life, I had felt like an outsider in my own family. Not just because of favoritism, but the physical differences, the missing baby photos, my grandmother's cryptic comments. What if there was more to the story than I knew? My investigation began with a visit to my grandmother in the Silver Pines nursing home. Advanced Alzheimer's had robbed her of most recent memories, but sometimes the past came through with startling clarity. I found her in the common room, staring out a window at the garden beyond. "Grandma, it's Cassandra," I said, taking her fragile hand. She turned to me, her eyes cloudy, then suddenly focused. "Cassandra, the one with the green eyes." She reached up to touch my curly hair. "Not like the others, are you?" "No, Grandma, I'm not." "Do you remember when I was born?" She frowned, confusion clouding her features. "Born? No, not born. Came later. Your mother was so sad after the second one. The doctor said no more, but she wanted another so badly." My heart began to race. "The second one? You mean after Amanda, the boy? The little boy who died?" Her grip on my hand tightened. 3 days old.
Lungs not right. Your mother couldn't bear it. Then you came. Different, but still theirs, they said. Love her the same, they said. Before I could ask more, her lucidity faded and she drifted into memories of her own childhood. The conversation I had hoped for was lost in the fog of her deteriorating mind. Yet she had given me enough, a thread to pull. The following weekend, I drove to my parents' home while they attended a charity function, using the spare key they didn't know I still had. The basement storage room held decades of family records, organized with my mother's characteristic precision. Birth certificates, insurance policies, medical records, all neatly labeled and filed. I found Amanda's birth certificate easily, the original with my parents' names clearly listed as biological parents. My file contained only a certified copy issued when I was 1 year old, not the original. Unusual, but not definitive proof of anything. Then I found the medical records. My mother's obstetric history showed 3 pregnancies. Amanda, a son named Michael, who died shortly after birth from respiratory distress syndrome, and then nothing. No record of a pregnancy with me. At the bottom of a box marked insurance, I discovered an old envelope from Eastern States Adoption Services. It contained correspondence about a home study my parents completed while in the process of adopting a child. The letters were dated the year before I was born. My hands shook as I carefully returned everything to its place. I wasn't ready to confront my parents, not without more information. On my way out of the neighborhood, I impulsively stopped at the home of Mrs. Patterson, an elderly neighbor who had lived next door to my family since before I was born. She had always been kind to me, slipping me cookies when Amanda wasn't looking. Mrs. Patterson welcomed me warmly, exclaiming over how grown-up I looked and insisting I stay for tea. As we sat in her cluttered living room, I carefully steered the conversation toward the past. I'm working on a family history project, I explained, a half-truth at best. I'm trying to fill in gaps from when I was very young. Oh, what a lovely idea, she said, pouring tea into delicate cups. Your parents must be so pleased. I actually aren't really the sentimental type, I admitted. I was hoping you might remember some things from being our neighbor for so long.
For instance, do you remember when I came home from the hospital as a baby? A shadow passed over her face. She set down her teacup with a slight clatter. Cassandra, dear, I don't think I should be the one to answer. I think I already know, but I need to hear it from someone else. She sighed deeply, her kind eyes sad. You were about 6 months old when you arrived, she said. Such a beautiful baby, with those remarkable green eyes. Your parents had been devastated after losing little Michael. The doctors told your mother she couldn't have more children after that difficult birth. They had just started looking into adoption when they were matched with you. It happened very quickly, as I recall. Did everyone know I was adopted? I asked. In the beginning, yes, she replied. But as you grew, your parents mentioned it less and less. By the time you were in school, I don't think they talked about it at all. I always thought it was strange that they never told you, but it wasn't my place to say anything. And Amanda, did she know? Mrs. Patterson hesitated. I don't believe so. She was only 4 when you came. Children that age don't always understand or remember things clearly. I thanked her for her honesty and left, feeling a strange mix of betrayal and relief. The puzzle pieces of my childhood were finally fitting together, explaining the subtle, persistent sense that I was different, separate, somehow less than. But I needed irrefutable proof, something that couldn't be explained away or denied. I decided to take a DNA test, ordering a kit online to compare my genetic makeup to established family groups. The process was simple: a saliva sample mailed to a lab with results available in 4 to 6 weeks. Those weeks of waiting were agonizing, yet clarifying.
I went through the motions at work, endured obligatory family dinners thick with tension, and waited for the scientific confirmation of what I already suspected in my heart. When the email finally arrived with my results, I wasn't surprised. There was zero genetic connection between me and the family I had grown up with. I was definitively not biologically related to any of them. The truth I had suspected for months was now confirmed in cold, hard data. What I hadn't anticipated was how liberating it would feel. Rather than feeling more alienated, I felt free. The mystery that had haunted me all my life now had a logical explanation. I hadn't failed to fit in because I was defective or unlovable. The reason was simply that I came from different stock altogether. The question now was what to do with this information. I hadn't yet decided when fate intervened in the form of a desperate phone call from my mother. It was a Tuesday evening as I reviewed journal articles at my kitchen table, still processing the DNA test results. Seeing my mother's name flashing on my phone screen was unusual enough to make me pause. We hadn't spoken since our argument about Amanda's role in my professional downfall. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Cassandra." My mother's voice sounded tight with emotion. "You need to come to Mass General Hospital right away. It's Amanda. She's very ill." My first thought was suspicion, another of Amanda's schemes, perhaps some elaborate manipulation. "What's wrong with her?" "She has acute myeloid leukemia." The irony wasn't lost on me. The very disease I had spent years researching now afflicted my sister. "It's aggressive, Cassandra. The doctors say she needs a bone marrow transplant as soon as possible." A complex wave of emotions crashed over me. Shock, a flicker of indignation quickly replaced by guilt, and underneath it all, genuine concern. Despite everything, I didn't want Amanda to suffer. "I'll be there in an hour," I said, already reaching for my coat. The oncology floor at Mass General was painfully familiar from my years of research. The antiseptic smell, the hushed voices, the underlying current of fear, all were now colored by personal stakes. Experiencing them as a family member rather than a doctor brought a new, unsettling dimension. My parents were in the waiting area, my father pacing while my mother sat rigidly in a plastic chair. Both looked older than I remembered, worn down by worry. When my mother saw me, relief softened her expression. "Thank you for coming," she said, as if surprised that I would show up for my own sister's crisis. "The doctor will be here soon to explain everything." Dr. Patel, a petite woman with kind eyes and the direct manner typical of oncologists, led us to a consultation room. "The leukemia is progressing rapidly. We've started chemotherapy, but given these specific genetic markers of her cancer, a bone marrow transplant represents her best chance for long-term survival. We'll need to test family members for compatibility. Siblings often provide the best match." My parents immediately agreed to be tested, though Dr. Patel explained that parents are rarely perfect matches. "The best hope is usually a sibling," she said, turning her gaze to me. I nodded, unable to trust myself to speak. The irony was almost unbearable. I had spent years researching treatments for blood cancers only to have my sister diagnosed with one, and now I, the very sister she had sabotaged, might be her only hope. Amanda's hospital room was dim, the blinds drawn against the afternoon sun. She looked startlingly different from the polished, confident woman who had stormed into my lab months earlier. Her hair, once lustrous, had begun to thin from chemotherapy. Her complexion was pale, her weight reduced drastically. Seeing her so diminished shocked me more than I expected. Her eyes fluttered open as I approached. "Cassandra," she whispered weakly. "You came?" "Of course I came," I replied automatically, taking the chair beside the bed. "I need to tell you something," she said, struggling to sit up slightly. "About your research, I did take it. I gave it to Wells. I was jealous and I wanted to hurt you." Tears filled her eyes. "And now I have the exact disease you were trying to cure. Karma's a right." I didn't know how to respond. Part of me appreciated her honesty, while another part questioned whether this was yet another manipulation, perhaps a deathbed confession designed to win sympathy, or, more importantly, my bone marrow. "I'll talk about it later," I said finally. "You need to focus on getting better now." The testing process was quick, a simple blood draw to determine compatibility. While we waited, the pressure mounted. My parents remained at the hospital, my mother barely leaving Amanda's side. Extended family began arriving, aunts, uncles, cousins, all rallying around Amanda with food, flowers, and emotional support. One evening in the hospital cafeteria, several relatives cornered me. "You'll donate if you're a match, right?" my Aunt Patricia asked, as if there could be any question. Amanda had always looked up to me. The blatant rewriting of history was staggering, but I simply nodded and escaped to the relative privacy of the hospital garden. "There," Martin said, finding me as soon as I texted him about the situation. He sat beside me on a stone bench. "You know the results of the DNA test."
You're not biologically related. The chances of being a match are the same as any random person on the street. I know, I said. But what if I am a match? What then? Then you have a choice to make, he replied. And it needs to be your choice, Cass, not driven by guilt or obligation. The next day, Dr. Patel called my parents and me into the consultation room again. My father and mother were not matches, as expected. Then she turned to me. "Cassandra, your results indicate that you are a potential match. Not perfect, but close enough that we believe a transplant could be successful." My mother burst into tears of relief, while my father placed a heavy hand on my shoulder. "Thank God," he said. "When can we schedule the procedure?" "Wait," Dr. Patel said, holding up a hand. "Donating bone marrow is a serious procedure. Cassandra needs to understand what's involved and make her own decision." She turned to me. "We would need to harvest stem cells from your bone marrow, most likely from your pelvic bone. It requires anesthesia and carries some risks, though relatively minor. Recovery takes about 2 weeks with some pain and discomfort." But my mother interrupted. "She'll do it, of course." I felt a sudden, overwhelming need for space. "I need some time to think," I said, standing abruptly. "I'll let you know my decision tomorrow." My mother followed me into the hallway, incredulous. "What is there to think about? This is Amanda's life we're talking about." "I understand that," I said, keeping my voice steady. "But I need to consider this carefully." "Consider what? That you might be too busy to save your sister's life after everything this family has done for you?" she demanded. I almost laughed at the absurdity. "What exactly has this family done for me, Mom, besides lying to me my entire life?" She recoiled as if I had struck her. "What are you talking about?" "I know I'm adopted," I said, the words strange in my mouth despite having known the truth for weeks. "I'm not biologically related to any of you." She paled visibly. "Who told you that?" "No one," I replied. "I figured it out and confirmed it with a DNA test." "Were you ever going to tell me the truth?" Her shock quickly morphed into righteous indignation. "That doesn't change anything. We raised you. We're your family. Family helps each other." "I'll help," I said carefully. "I can pay for a national bone marrow registry search. Thousands of potential donors. One might be an even better match than I am." "We don't want your money," she snapped. "We want you to do what's right. You owe your sister this." "I'll give you my answer tomorrow," I repeated, turning away before the tears threatening to spill could be seen. That night, I barely slept, turning over every angle of my impossible situation. If I refused to donate, Amanda might die, and I would carry that burden forever. If I agreed, I would be saving the life of someone who deliberately tried to destroy mine, reinforcing a lifetime pattern of putting Amanda's needs above my own. By morning, I still hadn't decided. But as I walked into the hospital, I knew the confrontation I had been avoiding for decades could no longer be postponed. It was time for the truth, all of it, to finally come to light. The hospital waiting room had transformed into an impromptu family gathering by the time I arrived. My father stood by the window, his tall frame silhouetted against the morning light,
deep in conversation with my Uncle Robert. My mother sat surrounded by her sisters, all speaking in hushed tones that fell silent the moment I entered. Two cousins occupied chairs in the corner, scrolling through their phones with detached interest, as if drafted into this family crisis. At the center of it all was Amanda, seated in a wheelchair. The chemotherapy had taken a visible toll. Her skin had a grayish cast, and a colorful scarf covered her thinning hair. Despite her weakened state, she projected vulnerability in a way that drew the gaze and sympathy of everyone around her. My mother rose immediately when she saw me. "Cassandra, we've been waiting. Have you made your decision?" All conversations stopped. Every person in the room turned to me with expressions ranging from expectation to barely concealed judgment. The weight of their collective gaze was suffocating. "I'd like to speak with all of you about the bone marrow donation and some other matters." My father frowned. "What other matters? Amanda doesn't have time for distractions, Cassandra. She needs an answer about the transplant." "This is relevant, and it won't take long." Reluctantly, they arranged themselves around the waiting room. A jury assembled to hear my case. Amanda's wheelchair was positioned at the center, the place of honor she had always occupied in our family dynamic. I took a deep breath. I've been thinking about what it means to be family. I spoke about obligations and loyalties, truths and lies. "Cassandra, if this is about your adoption, we can discuss that later. Right now, we need to focus on Amanda's health." A murmur ran through the room. Clearly, not everyone had been privy to this family secret. "You're adopted?" Amanda asked, her voice weak but sharp in curiosity. "Since when?" "Since birth," I replied, meeting her gaze directly, something our parents never told either of us. My father stepped forward, hands raised placatingly. "This isn't the time or place for this discussion. Amanda is fighting for her life, and you're bringing up ancient history." "It's not ancient history to me. It's my life, my identity, and it's directly relevant to the bone marrow donation." "How?" my mother demanded. "You're a match." "Actually, I'm only a partial match, which is statistically unusual. Now I understand why. I took a DNA test recently. It confirmed what I've suspected for a while. I'm not biologically related to any of you." The silence that followed was deafening. Amanda's eyes widened as she looked to our parents for confirmation or denial. My mother recovered first. "The DNA test doesn't change the fact that you're part of this family. We raised you. We provided for you. We gave you everything." "Did you?" I asked quietly. "Or did you consistently favor Amanda while treating me like an outsider? Did you ever wonder why I threw myself into academics, moved across the country for college, and built my life around achievements unrelated to this family?" "That's not fair," my father protested.
"No, you didn't," I said, releasing decades of pent-up hurt. "Amanda got the love, attention, and benefit of the doubt. I got conditional approval when I achieved something you couldn't ignore, and criticism or indifference the rest of the time." "This is ridiculous," my mother snapped. "We're not here to rehash childhood grievances. We're here because Amanda needs a bone marrow transplant. You owe your sister your bone marrow. It's family." I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder containing my DNA results. "Actually," I said steadily, "she's not my sister." I handed the folder to my father, whose hands trembled slightly as he opened it. Amanda leaned forward in her wheelchair. "What does it say?" she demanded. "It says Cassandra has no genetic relationship to our family. 0% shared DNA with any of us." "And you never told me?" Amanda turned to our parents, incredulous. "All these years, you let me believe she was my biological sister?" "We wanted you both to feel like real sisters," my mother insisted. "The biology doesn't matter. Family is more than DNA." "If family is more than DNA," I said, "then why did you always treat us differently? Why was Amanda always the favorite, always believed, always centered, while I was an afterthought?" "That's not true," my father began, but even to his own ears, his protest sounded weak. "It is true," I pressed. "When Amanda deliberately sabotaged my research and destroyed my career, you refused to believe me. You suggested I needed therapy for paranoia, even after she confessed to it. She did what? My Uncle Robert asked, shocked. This particular family drama hadn't reached the extended family yet. Amanda looked ashamed. I did take her research, she admitted quietly. I was jealous. Cassandra was finally getting recognition, becoming the successful one. I couldn't stand it. My mother's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. That's between you two. It has nothing to do with this medical situation. It has everything to do with it, I countered. You're asking me to undergo a painful, invasive procedure for someone who deliberately tried to destroy everything I've worked for, someone who has never shown me the slightest loyalty or kindness. And you're using family as justification when you've spent my life treating me as less than family. Amanda was crying now, silent tears tracking down her pale cheeks. I didn't know you were adopted. They never told me. Would it have made a difference? Would you have treated me better if you'd known I wasn't your biological sister? She looked away, unable to meet my eyes. That was answer enough. I think it's time for some honesty in this family, I said, gathering my bag. I'm not refusing to help Amanda. I've already contacted the National Bone Marrow Registry and offered to pay for an expanded search. There are thousands of potential donors out there. One of them might be an even better match than I am. But what if there isn't time? What if the search takes too long? My mother demanded. Then I will reconsider. But first, I want to explore all other options. Options that don't involve me sacrificing for a family that has never sacrificed for me. How can you be so cold? My Aunt Patricia interjected. This is Amanda's life we're talking about. Yes, it is, I agreed. The same Amanda who had no concern for my life, my career, my future when she stole my research. The same Amanda who has been favored and protected by this family at my expense for 32 years. I turned to leave, them caused, looking back at the tableau of shocked and angry faces. I'll be in touch about the registry search, but right now, I need some distance from all of you. As I walked out of the waiting room, I felt a strange mixture of grief and liberation. The family I had spent my life trying to please, trying to belong to, had never truly been mine. The revelation was both painful and freeing. For the first time, I was making a choice based solely on what was right for me, not on the approval I had spent a lifetime chasing. 6 months can change everything. The seasons had turned twice since that confrontation in the waiting room hospital. Summer had faded into fall, and winter had yielded reluctantly to spring. Sitting in a small cafe in Portland, Oregon, I watched raindrops trace patterns on the window, reflecting on how completely my life had transformed in that short span of time. After walking away from my family, I had thrown myself into two parallel quests: helping Amanda find a bone marrow donor through the National Registry and searching for my own biological roots. The first task proved surprisingly straightforward. With the financial resources I provided, the registry expanded its search and identified 3 potential donors within weeks. One of them, a college student from Minnesota, proved to be an excellent match, better than I would have been. The second quest had led me here, to this rainy corner of the Pacific Northwest, waiting to meet the woman who had given birth to me 32 years ago. Her name was Catherine Collins. After hiring a specialist in adoption reunions, I had located her within months. Our first contact had been through email, then a tentative phone call, both of us struggling to find words adequate to the moment. Now, after weeks of correspondence, we had agreed to meet in person. The bell above the cafe door jingled, and I knew immediately it was her. The curly auburn hair was streaked with silver, the green eyes so like my own, the hesitant smile scanning the room until she found me. Seeing my biological mother for the first time was like looking at a preview of my own future, both familiar and strange. "Catherine?" she asked, approaching my table. I stood, unsure of the protocol for this unprecedented moment. Do we shake hands, hug, simply nod in recognition of our shared genetics?
Catherine solved the dilemma by gently touching my arm, a gesture that acknowledged our connection without presuming too much. "You look so much like my mother," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Those eyes, pure Collins genetics. Over the next several hours, Catherine filled in the blanks of my origin story. She had been a 19-year-old college student when she became pregnant.
The father, a fellow student, had wanted no part of parenthood. With no family support and no financial resources, she had made the wrenching decision to place me for adoption. "I wanted you to have stability, opportunities I couldn't provide," she explained, twisting a napkin between her fingers. "But not a day went by that I didn't think about you, wondering who you were becoming." We discovered shared traits beyond our physical resemblance, a love of science. Catherine had been a high school biology teacher, analytical in her approach to problems, and even shared my habit of tucking our hair behind the left ear when concentrating. Nature had asserted itself despite the absence of nurture. Meeting Catherine was just one part of my healing journey. The other crucial element was therapy, which I had finally begun after years of avoiding it. Dr. Sophia Chen helped me process not just the recent revelations, but the lifetime of subtle and not-so-subtle messages that had eroded my sense of self-worth. What your adoptive family did, giving you no knowledge of your origins, was profoundly damaging, she told me during one session. But equally damaging was the pattern of favoritism and dismissal. You internalized the message that you were less valuable, less worthy of love and attention. Gradually, I began to rebuild my sense of identity, separating who I truly was from the person I had constructed to earn approval from my adoptive family. I discovered parts of myself that had been suppressed for years: a dry sense of humor, a love of painting, the ability to set boundaries without guilt. Professionally, my life took an unexpected turn as well. Dr. Eleanor Hayes, my mentor from medical school, reached out after hearing about my situation through professional channels. She had recently accepted a position as director of a new hematology research institute in Seattle and offered me a senior research position. "Your work was always brilliant, Cassandra. What happened at Johnson wasn't your fault, and the scientific community knows it." Wells's so-called breakthrough had failed to produce the results he promised. My original approach remained the most promising avenue. I accepted the position in Seattle, just a few hours from Catherine, and began a new chapter. The institute offered resources and autonomy I had never experienced at Johnson, alongside colleagues who respected my expertise and valued my contributions. Martin had also moved west, accepting a position in the genetics department. Our friendship, forged during the family crisis, began evolving into something deeper. Taking the step from friends to partners was daunting after so many relational disappointments, but Martin's steady presence and unwavering support made the risk feel worthwhile. As for Amanda, the bone marrow transplant had been successful. Updates from extended family indicated she was in remission and recovering well. My parents reached out several times, their messages swinging between guilt-laden apologies and subtle attempts to restore the old dynamic. I responded politely, but maintained firm boundaries, unwilling to be drawn back into patterns that had caused so much pain. 6 months after the confrontation at the hospital, I received an unexpected call from my adoptive mother. "Cassandra," she began, her voice uncharacteristically subdued. "I'm calling to apologize. Really apologize, not just say the words." She paused, struggling to maintain composure. "We did you a terrible disservice by not telling you the truth about your adoption. You were right about how we treated you compared to Amanda. I've been talking to a therapist, trying to understand why we did that." "Why did you?" I asked, genuinely curious. She hesitated. "After we lost Michael, I was afraid of loving another child completely. Adopting felt safer somehow, like keeping an emotional distance. It wouldn't hurt as much if something happened to you too. Amanda was already there, already loved. You were new, unknown. But that's no excuse for how we treated you. None at all." It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was honest in a way my mother had never been with me before. We spoke for nearly an hour, navigating decades of hurt and misunderstanding.
By the end, we agreed to move forward cautiously, rebuilding our relationship on more truthful terms. Similar conversations followed with my father and eventually Amanda. Painful and sometimes heated, they were ultimately cathartic. We would never be the picture-perfect family of holiday movies, but we could forge connections rooted in truth rather than pretense. The experience taught me profound lessons about family. Biology creates connections, but love, respect, and honesty are what transform those connections into meaningful relationships. My colleagues at the Research Institute, Martin, Catherine, and Dr. Chen, had all shown me more genuine care than the people who had raised me. I no longer felt compelled to prove my worth through achievement alone. My value wasn't determined by usefulness or accomplishments. It was inherent. I was learning to honor and protect my authentic self. 1 year after the confrontation at the hospital, I stood at a podium at the National Conference on Adoption Rights, sharing my story with an audience of fellow adoptees, adoptive parents, and advocacy groups. Looking out at the attentive faces, I concluded with the insight that had finally brought me peace. Family isn't defined by the blood in our veins or the name on a birth certificate. True family is built through love, honesty, and mutual respect. Sometimes we find it in unexpected places with people who see us clearly and value us completely. And sometimes the most important family member we need to reconnect with is ourselves. The authentic self that may have been buried under years of trying to belong where we were never fully accepted. The applause that followed was warm and affirming. More meaningful, however, were the conversations afterward with people who had experienced similar journeys. For the first time, I felt truly seen and understood, a part of a community where my experience was valued rather than dismissed. Reflecting on the strange twists of fate that had led me here, I realized how pivotal each painful event had been. Had Amanda not betrayed me, had she not fallen ill, had I not discovered my adoption, I might still have been living a half-life, forever seeking approval from people incapable of giving it freely. Sometimes the most painful ruptures create openings for profound healing. What about you? Have you ever discovered a truth about yourself or your family that changed everything? Has betrayal ever led to unexpected growth? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that family can be chosen and created, not only inherited. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, sometimes the hardest paths lead to the most beautiful destinations.